Yeah, well, we are together here in this conference right now, and they have been speaking a lot about all the mindfulness and all these like rituals and ways to connect with nature. And I was thinking, well, we've been doing that forever, you know? And I actually,
We're finally catching up, man.
yeah, you're fine, exactly. So I'm just doing it the way my father taught me to do it. We are not making anything up. The way I was educated to do these rituals is just the way I do it with tourists, with visitors. So I'm just sharing with them what I learned from my father and what my father learned from his father. It's not that we on purpose decided, oh, we're gonna make this way because it's kind of trendy. It's just the way we do it.
Wake and Wander, Episode 8. My guest today is Uriel Alcántara. This episode was recorded in Oaxaca, Mexico. Oaxaca is known for its food, nightlife, and mezcal, and I would discover that, as you'll see. But my first experience in Oaxaca was heading into the nearby mountains that surround Oaxaca City, and that's where I met Uriel. He's working on a project there on behalf of the Mixe community, an indigenous community with a really good backstory. They were never conquered by the Spanish, and they still practice a lot of their traditions, living in small mountain communities in a very self-sufficient way. After the trip, I had the chance to catch up with Uriel and ask him a little bit more about the Mixe people and the way they live their life, and just to learn a little bit more about Oaxaca City, where the nightlife has really exploded. We actually recorded this episode in a public park because we got kicked out of the first place we were going to record. I hope you enjoy relaxing bird sounds. This podcast will be talking travel, talking to guests from all over the world. Here's episode 8. Did you stay up last night to watch the eclipse?
No, I don't know. Couldn't. We were trying to, but it was kind of at midnight, and no, I was just like went to bed straight. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I stayed up way too late.
yeah,
We were at a mezcaleria just
okay,
by my hotel.
yeah.
And then as we're sitting on the rooftop, we saw it start to occur. And then I went back to my hotel and just sat out. All of a sudden, it got to be like 2:30 a.m.
Oh, really?
Yeah, saw the whole thing. It turned bright red,
Uh-huh. Wow.
and then it started to return,
Wow.
the light coming back. I was like,
Interesting.
oh, I better go to bed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's whether I stayed up too late or I had too much mezcal.
Oh, probably both.
Oaxaca's a fun town.
It is a fun town, and you're just here for a few days. There's so much things to do in Oaxaca City, but also right around the city, it's many cool things to do.
Somebody was telling me that before the pandemic, there was only maybe 10 or 15 rooftop areas to hang out.
Uh-huh.
And now, everywhere you go in the city, you see rooftops. Someone said there's over 100. You grew up in this area. Is that true? Have you seen since the pandemic just an explosion
Yeah,
of that?
but it was not related to the pandemic. It is related to a very bad mayor in the city that we had, because this is like a World Heritage City. We are not supposed to have rooftops because the view, like the how say like the landscape of the city is supposed to be colonial, and the rooftops completely change the aspect of the city. So this rooftop thing is more like a government process where they allow just a few of them, but then it was an explosion. And to me, I live in the center, in downtown, so it's kind of a lot of noise. For example, there are some rooftops with like loud music in the night. It's not legal, but in Mexico we're not like exactly following the rules all the time. Yeah.
So it's not legal to have the rooftop or to have the loud music? Because I also heard that last night, till 2, 3 a.m., and it just projects everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't exactly know the legal situation right now, but we have this thing called amparo where you can protect yourself from law action. So a lot of people do that, kind of start illegally. They use this legal trick, let's say a loophole, and then they can have their rooftops. But I don't know exactly. I will be lying if I tell you how it goes. But it's new because a mayor like kind of was too loose on that. Like it was
People convinced him to do it.
probably, yeah, something like that.
I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Or
I like it the way it was before. I also live in the center, so and there was this guy called. He was an artist, an activist, very cool and important person. His name was Francisco Toledo. So Toledo was always protecting kind of this cultural heritage. And he will be opposed, definitely opposed, and he was very influential. Although he was a very quiet man, he was a very good activist. So the fact that he's not here anymore, he passed away like 5 years ago. I feel like kind of we kind of need him, you know?
Ah, so like the major opposition who would have been the voice against it was gone. The opportunity came.
Exactly. There you go.
I see your point of it. If I lived in the center and, you just have a baby now, you have different priorities. Maybe if you're a lot younger, it's more exciting. As first time here, visitor, I just was shocked because everyone described Oaxaca as a smaller town to me, a smaller city, and maybe they had been here previously. But when I arrived, I'm like, there is a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Mezcleria on every corner. Is it overwhelming for you? So you're a guide, you work a lot in the mountains, you are from the hillside, the countryside, which we'll talk about. Is it overwhelming for you to come back into a city? Does it take you a few days to adjust?
Not necessarily. I like the city as well, and I lived in Mexico City for a few years. So I guess I'm pretty used to like noisy cities. I mean, it's not that big of a problem, but I prefer like the city being a little more like more quiet, let's say. But I can adjust, no problem. But I think it will be better without so many rooftops and without all this noise sometimes.
Okay, well, I'll try and keep it down tonight. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Nah, you're more
We
than
just
good.
came back from a 4-day trip in the mountains, and you were my guide. And we were talking about guiding a lot because I also guide. And it's so funny when you come back from these adventures because you're in such a little bubble where it's just you and your group. And as the leader, you have all this responsibility, and everybody looks to you every moment of every day of what should I do and what are you going to teach me? And then the day after, it's kind of like, wait, no one needs me anymore.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that, and my style when I get back, it's that I kind of try to isolate from a lot of things, like try to be on my own, like not thinking too much, not worrying too much about things. I guess I'm that kind of person who worries a lot sometimes about like everything happening in the right way. But I was amazed because you were telling me that you are kind of like, oh, nobody needs me now, you know? But in my case, I prefer kind of to shut down. And that's not good for my partner because she's like, she wants to know what happened and how did everything go. And she wants to tell me also how's she doing, which is really cool, you know? I admit that it's not the best position to be in, but I kind of need my time and space. I have these two sides. I think I'm also very like internal sometimes, you know? And I also like to be like social. But after guiding for a few days, you kind of need some space. At least I do. I don't know how's your case.
For me, I do like, I'm sort of an introvert too, believe it or not, so I need that recovery time. But just the role, right? You're just so used to being in that line of service. And every day you have such a purpose, which is to make these people happy and to show them things. And then when that's gone, it's just kind of like this void for a couple hours of like, oh man, I don't know what to do with myself now. My purpose is gone. But I hear you. But it was funny. You were telling me that you sleep in your own bed. You like totally isolate yourself. You're like, I need this recuperation time.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes when you are like on duty, when you're like guiding, you have to wake up super early to make sure everything is ready, or you are kind of this in this alert mode, you know. So your sleep is very like light. Anything wakes you up. That happens to me, you know. Probably not to everyone, but I have a good time. I always have a very good time, like as you say, making people happy. It comes kind of natural to me in Oaxaca and in my family. We're very, how we call it, like we are educated to be good guests, you know. So even if I'm not guiding, I'm also always making sure that everyone is okay. That's kind of in my ADN DNA.
It's just like a natural caring for other people. I think that's a
Yeah,
good quality to have.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about your project. Here in Oaxaca, there's a lot of opportunities to get out in the mountains. The
Hmm.
city's surrounded by mountains. So a lot of tour operators already offer trekking. In some cases, in the Sierra Norte, there's village-to-village treks where you can go and stay in these smaller areas. But you're from a very specific tribe. Would you call it a tribe, the Mixe?
Hmm. Hmm.
The Mixe people? M-I-X-E, right?
MIXE exactly, and in our language we will call ourselves Ayuk.
Ayuk.
Yeah.
And your people have their own area that now you're trying to develop this tourism project to bring people in, and we were able to go visit some of these villages. I don't think I saw one other visitor. Everything was very raw and authentic. So I'm curious if you can explain to people what you're trying to do and maybe a little bit about your background and how you got into this.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm gonna start with my background. Actually, I've always been very involved with my tribe, as you call it, with the Mije people. Since I was a kid, my father, who is from the mountains as well, used to take me there for vacation time. I think I was explaining to you guys how here we have like all these traditional political organization methods. So he was actually elected to be the mayor of the town, and I went to live with him. Although I was born here in the city, I've been always very close to this culture. And then I went to college to study political sciences and international relations. So for some time I was working on the government, but government has it's a world in itself and not necessarily the best. So because my father told me that he needed some support, some help in this project, especially in this marketing area and like with the use of internet and so on, I got a little involved at the beginning in the project, but then little by little I was kind of drawn into the project more and more. And now let's say that I'm leading this project with this wonderful group of people. The project itself, we are trying to open the Mije region for tourism, but in the most responsible way because it's a very unique area in Oaxaca, probably the most preserved culture from the pre-Hispanic times. So it requires a special vision, like let's say, to be very responsible about what we're doing in that area because, like tourism can be a negative force as well, and if it's not done in the right way and with the right people, there are some risks, especially with the history of these communities, the Mije communities, of resistance against colonization. There is still the culture of like not really trust anybody who comes from outside until you know what they are doing. So it requires a special view on my own region, and also something very important is that we still have a lot of sacred places, and handling or managing these sacred places, it's a special responsibility, let's say.
Love what you said there. A lot of issues we can get into, but let's talk a little bit about the history of the people first, because I was reading a little bit about this morning. The Spanish came and they conquered Oaxaca area, right? And then they were trying to conquer the areas outside. And listen to this. I was reading this today. This is so cool. One of the generals wrote a letter to the King of Spain, and he was explaining that they were able to take a lot of the Oaxaca area, but there were only two regions they could not conquer, the provinces of the Zapotecs and the Mijes. And listen to this. This is direct from the letter that he wrote. In the whole territory, from one sea to the other, the natives serve without complaint, save for two provinces, the Zapotecs and the Mijes. The people of these two provinces, their land is so rocky that it cannot be crossed even on foot, for I have twice sent people to conquer them, who were unable to do so because of the roughness of the terrain and because the warriors are very fierce and well armed.
There you go. Like, I mean, I don't think there's much I could ask to that code that you just did, because that's exactly how it happened. Compared to some of the Zapotecs, because the Zapotecs that were living here in the valley kind of decided not to fight against the Spaniards. Other Zapotecs did, and the Mije people did, and we share the mountains with those Zapotecs as well. So if some word can describe the Mije regions, is resistance in many different ways, many different forms.
What kind of battles were they fighting? What kind of weaponry? Do you know what their tactics were?
Well, this is very interesting because normally we always say when we learn about history that the conquistadors had an advantage because they had firearms like gunpowder, you know. Another advantage could be horses. Those two advantages don't work there, because it's a very difficult terrain for a horse, and the gunpowder is such a humid place. It was even more humid then than now. These gunpowder weapons didn't represent an advantage. So they tried and they started to go little by little by foot. That would be one thing. But this is very interesting. The most feared weapon for the indigenous communities by then were not guns or swords. It was dogs.
Dogs.
Dogs. It was probably some of the most cruel ways to dominate people were done in the Mije region. And these people used to train dogs to hunt for humans. Of course, that scared the people much more than normal weapons, let's say. So they even had dogs with military rankings. They were like official soldiers, let's say, and they were even famous dogs for killing I don't know how many people. And so we now know that as I was saying, some of the most cruel ways to punish people or to conquer this area was the use of dogs.
So the Spanish were using dogs, or the Mije were using
The
dogs?
Spanish
The
were
Spanish
using
were
dogs
using
against
dogs.
the Mije people.
Wow, I've never heard that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they would, and the dogs just any human on the other side. Do you know how any of that works?
For what I know, something that could happen is that these communities were very small and very rustic. So when they knew that the Spanish soldiers were coming, probably along with other like Aztecs that knew the terrain, they would just go into the mountain and hide. So when they will show up, when they will like come to the community, to these little villages, towns, they won't find anybody. Just the shacks that they used to build. They'll probably set them on fire and use the dogs and their like sense of like how
Smell,
like
clothing
smell,
or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
to look for where they were. You know,
How terrifying!
that is
Being
terrifying.
tracked by a killer dog.
Exactly. And once they could find somebody, these dogs were trained to attack and sometimes to feed from them.
Oh my God.
It sounds terrible. It was terrible.
That's crazy. So how did the Mije fight back for that?
Well, we had like basic weapons like arrows, spears, but I think the best way it was that they know the terrain very well, that they knew how to use strategic spots to avoid the conquistadors to get
Just
there.
avoid them over time, and then
Yeah.
they give up. It's just too much.
Exactly, that's how it happened.
So then after that, were they able to coexist? So the Spanish just said, okay, we're not going to go into that mountain area anymore. They can do whatever they want out there. And then it was at peace, sort of?
Not really. They decided not to do it in the military way because it was too costly for them. What they started to do is to put all these mixed of Spanish and indigenous communities around the Mije territory, and they started to fight for the land in a bureaucratic way. Like, oh, this piece of land is mine. We go to a court, and the court, of course, is going to rule favoring the Spanish people or other ethnic groups that were allied to the Spanish people. And little by little, for hundreds of years, probably 200 years process, they were like diminishing the territory of the Mije people until leaving us where we are right now. So it was like a long process, and that is exactly what allowed us to keep a lot of our traditions. Because another way that this process happened was through religion and through music. It's very interesting because now the music is part of the Mije identity, but at the beginning it was kind of a way to bring the Spanish culture into the indigenous societies.
What do you remember from growing up from your parents talking about the Spanish, or is there any resentment still there?
I don't think so. It happened in a different way to other places. So I don't remember any time my family complaining about the Spanish people. That was a long time ago, and I don't think it's very present. And when the Spanish people come, we're very kind to them. We're not like resentful to them or something. Well, at least not that I know. You know, of course, it could be somebody there that doesn't like them, but in general, we're very welcome, and though we kind of understand this is a historical process, and also the way it happened, it's already part of our culture as well. I had the chance to go to Spain to visit some friends there, and when I met these people, it's like, oh, they're like us. Like, we have part of that Spanish culture as well. We cannot deny that. There are some people that are still very angry at that, but I believe that there was another time. I'm not saying that it was good. No, it was terrible. It was very cruel, as we were just speaking. But I think this is a different moment, and we have to see it in a different way.
So you were mentioning your dad was involved in the politics in the Mije communities, and I think you were explaining it on our tour a bit. Is that called the cargo system? Does that mean anything to you?
Yeah.
And can you explain that? So it seems like offices are held for 1 year,
Hmm.
you said?
Hmm.
Can you speak about that a little bit, how that political...
Sure, it is very interesting. It's probably one of the most interesting aspects of these trips is that in a lot of communities, not only the Mije, but the Mije is where this is still more alive and more present than any other culture in Oaxaca. Is we have this cargo system. We also know it as usos y costumbres, could be like uses and customs. Right now they are talking about like more specific term, more exact, precise term, which will be internal normative systems, which is more precise to describe what happens in these communities. So it's first important to say that people are ruled by their own people from the community. We don't depend on professional politicians, let's say. The most important decision making moment is the assembly where all the community gets together and decide how to solve the problems of the community all together, all the people that shows up to the assembly. But once a year, we hold an assembly to choose who are going to be our leaders, the authorities for next year. That includes the mayor, that includes, we call it alcalde, which will be kind of a judge figure, let's say. That includes the syndico who runs all the services in the community, and the younger people who helps to protect the community and also to like make decisions about specific topics like ecology, like water, and so on. So once the assembly gets together specifically for that purpose, they start to elect candidates. So you can actually show up to that assembly that morning not knowing that you're going to be elected mayor that day.
Really? You're
Yeah.
not even running. Someone
You're
just
not
nominates you.
even, yeah, there's no campaigns or something. You just show up to the assembly. Of course, people a couple months before start talking about, I'm thinking about Will. Will is a very hardworking man, and he's served before, so he knows how it works. And on that day, somebody will raise their hands and say, like, hey, I think this person is a very good option. And that person has the chance to defend itself, which is very funny because this is kind of the other logic, like you don't want to do that for 1 year because that means that you're going to stop working. You're going to stop doing a lot of things that you usually do in order to serve the community. But you get so many things from the community that this is kind of an obligation. This is kind of a honor to do it because not everyone can be elected, You need to have like a certain reputation to be elected. So there's people who want to be elected, but they are not elected because people here say like, it's kind of funny that you want to be elected because normally you don't want to be elected because it's a free service, like you are not paid for that service.
So people will stand up, and instead of telling the congregation why they should do it, they say why they shouldn't?
Exactly, just like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so much different than like
Yeah.
our politics here in the modern world. That's
Yeah,
so crazy.
exactly. I mean, it's important not to romanticize. There are communities that work very well, and there are some other communities where there's violence and there's other problems that cannot be solved by somebody who is not a professional politician or policymaker. So there are success cases, like not very successful cases. There's every kind of thing. We have 570 municipalities in Oaxaca, and 418, something like that, are ruled by this traditional system. 150 something are ruled by political party system that most people know.
So how many communities of Mije are there?
Mije is 19 municipalities.
19.
Yeah, 19. And many more communities, probably like a couple hundred communities. Every municipality is responsible for more communities.
Is there a quote-unquote uniting government, like federal government between them, or everybody's on their own?
No, everybody is on their own. That's an issue in Oaxaca. There's a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of territoriality, let's say, and like territory problems are every day happening in Oaxaca.
Well, probably over resources, right? Because I was just going to ask you, the way these folks are living is very traditional. I was joking with someone else on the trip. I said, if the world ever starts to end, I'm going to come here because these people are already living off the land. All the meals we had cooked over a wood fire. Seems like most, if not all, of the ingredients were just gathered or grown right around these communities. And they seem very self-sufficient, and that's the way they're still living.
Exactly, because of this historical process that we were just talking about, We learn how to solve our own problems. We still live on the land, although that's changed a lot in the recent decades. We still have that knowledge, let's say. And I think the same. Like now that I'm getting more involved with the community through this project, I know that I can be elected at some point to be, I don't know, the mayor or to have some of these charges. On the other hand, I think, well, in the city, in Oaxaca City, we have a lot of water issues. We don't have those problems there. We have no enough green areas in Oaxaca. We have a lot of those there. So if I see it that way, of course I want to keep contact with these communities because it represents, as you say, kind of a oasis, kind of a place where if problems arise here, there's always that place to go.
So take us through how you started this. Your family is from one of these 19 communities. I'm guessing you started there with talking with them about starting tourism and bringing people out there to share the culture. And then did you have to go to the other villages separately to present to their cargo systems or local communities? Tell us about how you did that.
Yeah, well, my family owns this hotel where we stayed a couple nights during the trip. So somebody from this community named Ayutla came to visit us and told us about their interest in creating this association of different people living in these communities to start bringing tourism in a responsible way. So my father actually was the one of the founders of this group, and he was also the first president of the group. But it was this first stage where we were just getting prepared because nobody knew, even believed that tourists could be interested in visiting these places because they had this vision of like all inclusive beach destinations, like that is tourism. But we used to tell him, no, like people are really interested in this culture right now. The way we do it, we don't need to change anything. We just need to, have the toilets ready, have clay, like pottery kind of things, like those kind of preparations.
Creature comforts,
Exactly.
extra blanket or two.
Exactly, just like that. And we didn't have to do much. And when I started operating the first trips, it was around 2018. I was responsible for finding the people, bringing them there. I was kind of the contact. We started to open our social media and so on. Then the pandemic came. We all know the story. And just a couple of years ago, we started again to start bringing people, and we've been working on, the marketing, on the different aspects. And right now, we have the opportunity to be in this conference where I just met you, and it's working well. It's working well.
So how would you describe to someone the experience? Are you mostly bringing people out there to hike, share sacred places, share culture, a little bit of all the above? Tell us about the itineraries and how you're developing them.
It was not difficult to develop the itinerary because all the services that we include in this group of people, they are very complementary. So these itineraries have a lot to do on how you navigate the territory. So we enter the Mije territory in Ayutla. There we have this wonderful woman. Her name is Regina, and she cooks for us this ceremonial dish known as machucado that you tried.
That's the one where you cook on the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah, tell us about this. This was amazing.
Yeah.
I'll share some videos and photos of this with the episode. It's incredible.
Yeah, this machucado, it's a dish that has been eaten for probably centuries. Regina herself says that like since she's a baby, she's been doing that ceremony. And basically, it's about making these kind of thick tortillas, let's put it like that for everyone to understand. And once they are cooked, they are mashed. So they make this kind of like a machucado actually comes from mashed, which means like a smash, like mash, I don't know. Then they put it on the floor in this particular pottery, like clay pot. And then they put some tomato sauce on top.
Well, but first they put the hot embers on the floor.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
take the embers out of the fire, put it on the floor, then put the clay pot directly
Exactly.
on these. This is inside a house.
Yeah. This is inside a house, and this is important. That it has to be in a how we call it in English, like we will call it la cocina de tierra. It will be like the dirt kitchen, the kitchen of dirt. So everyone is sitting around the machucado. It's a dish that it has to be shared. So instead of plates, you saw we used the avocado. We cut avocados in half, and that avocado is gonna be your plate. So you are mixing all this corn and the tomato sauce with the avocado. God, I'm getting hungry again
Right?
just to think about it. And there's also this particular ingredient that is known as chintesle, that it's a chili paste made of a specific mije type of chili that it's pasilla mije. That's the name, pasilla mije. And well, it's a very wonderful experience because it allows us to share and to present ourselves, to introduce ourselves, you know, and to get an idea of how ceremonial this society is, and also the shape of the corn dough represents a mountain as well. Mountains here are sacred, it's very important, and our sacred places and caves are always in mountains. So there's a big representation, and the main goal or the main purpose of cooking the machucado is to scare the hunger. That's what they say, like the scare the Lord of Hunger, because it's done in the moment. Normally, every family eats the 1st of August, and it's the moment where the corn from the last season is just about to be finished, and the new corn is not ready yet. So it's kind of a critical moment during the year where they are hoping that they have enough corn before the new crop is coming. Yeah, that's how it goes.
I was reading that a lot of the more cultural ceremonies or religious ceremonies, if you were, are done by women.
It depends. It depends. Not necessarily. It depends on the community. It depends on the tradition. Here there is the figure of what we call a shaman, called also shumabi, shumaiba, depends on the community. One way to translate the name will be the one who counts the days, because in the past, through the tradition of reading the corn seeds, corn grains, and they will tell you which day you should go to make your offerings to the mountain.
The corn will tell you?
Yeah, the disposition of the corn when they put it on the floor, they will tell you, the shaman will know how to read the position of the corn grains in the floor, and that will give them messages. And that's how they'll tell you when, what you should bring as an offering. And normally these people are men. But let's say that women are also very involved in the process. Another important thing is that, at least in the community where my father is from, you do your own rituals and ceremonies. Sometimes you don't go to this person, it's just part of everyday's life, you know? My family still practices these traditions. Every birthday, every New Year's, half of the year, we have special ceremonies for this. So sometimes we don't even need the shaman. It's just sort of part of our everyday's life.
Are you guys operating under your own calendar? I think I remember you saying, maybe I misunderstood because my Spanish is still horrible, but it was a 260-day calendar?
Oh, yeah, and another reason why they call the people who counts the days is because the pre-Hispanic societies were ruled by different calendaries running in cycles all at the same time. The two most important ones were the 260 day, that is composed by 13 months of 20 days each. That was the everyday's calendar, the one that everyone was using. And the 360 plus 5 days that we all know what is it about. Those were the two most important calendaries. There were other calendaries run at the same time, and these shamans are also in charge of keeping the count of all the different calendars. And there are some people who are still doing that.
That seems like a full-time job. Very confusing. I can't even
definitely.
follow one calendar. So it would overlap a lot, and so every year it would be different how the calendars are overlapping. Would that change the offerings and change the procedures?
Not necessarily. It was ruled more for the normal calendar, 260 days calendar. That was the most important one. That was kind of ruling every day's life, every day. But the important moments of these counts were where different calendars were aligned again, you know? So you remember these, like, I don't know, 2012, everyone was saying
the
that.
Mayan calendar.
Yeah, the end of the world. It was just a moment where many different calendars will go to zero again and start a new era. That's what it's all about. They never said something terrible was gonna happen. We're just like, oh, all the calendar is aligned again. We start a new era. That's basically how this calendar is run, and I think it's very important as a message to people. Like life is always running in cycles. Time nowadays we see it like linear, but life, like the year, like the how you call like the different stations of the year and different seasons, it's always in cycles. Our lives should be seen in cycles, and that's something we should all learn. Like when the winter comes, take it easy. When the spring comes, like put more energy on what you're doing. During autumn, like you have to stop little by little doing to get prepared for winter and go more internal. I think that's an important message of these societies that are still there.
I think that's great. I think we all naturally do it a little bit. We always talk about like hibernating in the winter, but a lot of times I'll catch myself punishing myself, or at least in the past, be like, oh, I'm being lazy or this or that. And I've tried now as an older adult to, okay, it's okay if I rest during winter. It's
Yeah,
okay if I'm taking this time because, as you say, this is how people lived forever, in these
exactly.
cycles where there were important things to do at certain times of the year. And at other times, it was time to rest or time to whatever. And in our capitalistic calendar now, it's just chug, 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 especially for us Americans, right? We just always
Exactly.
feel like we have to be pushing ourselves to the limit.
Definitely. And as you say, this capitalist society is kind of always pushing you to be productive, but the nature doesn't work that way. It's very simple. So I think it's very healthy to take your time during winter time, for example, to start probably prepare for what's coming, but you don't need to rush to get there. The nature will stop you in your tracks. And as they say, like I think it's like an Asian proverb or something, like you can prepare as much as you can. You can do all the work if you are like a farmer. But if the rain doesn't come, whatever you do, you're doomed. So I think it's a good message. Like even if you do your best, you be very productive, doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing more.
It's out of your hands to
Exactly.
some degree, too. I
Yeah.
love that. So part of this experience, you're going and seeing some of these cultural rituals. You're visiting these villages. You're seeing the way of life. You are connecting with these people in the history. But there's also a big active component to your tours, which is hiking.
Yeah.
And we were able to go to many different types of terrains. And as an outdoorsman, I was very impressed. It's not that far between these villages, and they all offer different experiences. For example, one of our hikes was down into valleys that were very jungle and waterfalls and areas where you can swim in the waterfalls. The other day, we summited one of the highest peaks, the Sacred Mountain. So yeah, talk a little bit about that. And all along our hikes, we were performing these ceremonies, sort of staying in touch with nature, asking for permission and this reverence.
Yeah, well, we are together here in this conference right now, and they have been speaking a lot about all the mindfulness and all these like rituals and ways to connect with nature. And I was thinking, well, we've been doing that forever. And I actually,
We're finally catching up, man.
yeah, you're finally exactly. So I'm just doing it the way my father taught me to do it. And we go to the sacred mountain for special occasions. We do it that way. That's the way we do it. Like we are not making anything up. The mountain is alive. There are entities living there. There is like a deity, let's call it that way, that is living there and that is helping us all the time. The way I was educated to do these rituals is just the way I do it with tourists, with visitors. So I'm just sharing with them what I learned from my father and what my father learned from his father. It's not that we on purpose decided, oh, we're gonna make this way because it's kind of trendy. It's just the way we do it. And as you saw, first we stop in this middle point on the way to the sacred place in the highest peak of the Sempualtepetl mountain. And that's where you have to ask permission. And you ask permission to the 4 points. They represent different things. And one of them, the last one, represents the spirit of the nature. And when you do these offerings, you are asking permission to the things you see, to the things that you don't see, to the trees, to the plants, to the birds, to all the animals that are there, because That's how the Mije people sees nature. It sees in a very personal and direct, close way. We don't need to stage anything. We don't need to like create any new like approach. It's just happening like that because our ancestors have been doing it like that. And that is related, I don't know if you know this figure, but 80% of the preserved lands in the world are protected by indigenous communities.
80, say that again?
80% of preserved forests in the world, they belong to indigenous communities.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. Indigenous communities are key to the survival of these forests, these natural areas that are wonderful. We probably are not aware of how important this culture is because not only the Mije but other cultures have a very close relation, very respectful relation to nature as an entity, almost as a person, not as a thing that is just out there, you know?
What was the name of the sacred mountain?
This name of the sacred mountain, it's Sempoaltepetl, which is a Nahuatl name, is an Aztec name, let's say. It means 20 peaks or 20 mountains because this huge mountain with different peaks on top. It was used. It's been used for probably 2,000 years as a sacred place for all the Mije communities. And the name in Mije is Ipshup. That means the same, like 20 peaks or 20 sacred spaces.
And were only the shamans allowed to summit, or could anybody in the community go up, and when would they go?
Anybody in the community is allowed to go. Sometimes you're accompanied by the shaman, and sometimes the shaman just tells you what you're supposed to do there. It depends on the case.
And what would be the purpose of going up? To start a new calendar, to start a new season, typically?
Normally, for the Mije people, you are going there when, for example, somebody has a disease, an important illness, and if that person cannot go, somebody from the family can go. In that case, it's important that Shumabi or a shaman it's tell you what to do, you know? Or when you are about to start a project that is you think it's important, you have to go there. And you were talking about the method to elect authorities. When you are elected an authority, you have to go there. Actually, sometimes it's more important than any other thing to go there because then you have the blessing of the spirit of the mountain to lead your people. And if you don't do it, people think that you are not going to have a good year or something's going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. So you better go, you know? And people from some communities have big offerings like turkeys, like roosters, hens, and it's very common to leave the animal there or to offer the blood of the animal and then you bring it back and you eat it with your family and with your like relatives. Yeah.
A couple of the other things we brought up were flowers and eggs.
Eggs, yeah, flour, eggs. There are also some type of tamales that are made for that specific purpose. Sometimes we also offer tepache, which is a fermentation, a ferment drink. And it depends on the tradition. My family tradition, we bring a rooster, but we leave it there. We leave it there alive, and we let the animals that live there do the job and reincorporate it into the nature. But that's what we do.
You mentioned Mexican drinks, the tepache. I think Mexico and the cultures here, it's just some of the most diverse offerings of drinks that I've ever seen.
Oh, yes.
You always have these corn drinks. Yesterday we had was like a squash juice or pumpkin drink. And you have stuff like tepache. Where does that come from in the culture? Like all these different really heavy, thick drinks that people like. Was it a nutritional thing back in the day where you were making these drinks for sustenance?
Yes, I don't know so much about it. It's a very interesting question. It all comes, we have a huge diversity of drinks. Just as a side note, I had this friend who's a photographer who came to Oaxaca to document 4 drinks. He ended up doing a full book on traditional pre-Hispanic Oaxacan drinks. And he stayed here, I think, for 2 years. He came like for 1 month or something. He stayed at last for 2 years or so. And yeah, Oaxaca has a very diverse culture. Probably the most important word to describe Oaxaca is diversity in terms of communities, in terms of food, in terms of cultures. And I think all these drinks are a reflection of all these cultures happening at the same time in history. So we have corn drinks, We have cacao drinks. They were ceremonial. A lot of drinks that make foam are considered ceremonial. We have different type of ferments. We have the mezcal, of course. We have the tepache that we drank. Is actually a mix of pulque that comes from an agave, and they add some extra sugars to make it more fermented. As you know, these like ferments are also very good for your health. We have atoles, which is a corn drink, like pretty thick. I don't know. There are so many. You're completely right, and everyone when they come should have at least 5 of those drinks to experiment. What is it about?
Do you remember the name of your friend's book?
Bebidas de Oaxaca, drinks of Oaxaca.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
have to check it out. That's so funny.
Her name is Chava Cueva. I recommend the book a lot. I didn't even know, even being from Oaxaca, I didn't know there was all these amazing drinks. Like, I don't know how many, but there's a lot, a lot, a lot.
What do you think is the most important thing you want to share through these tours? Like, what do you want people to take away from these experiences?
I will say there are 2 messages. One is that the relation, the contact that we have with nature, it's on our DNA. We just need to be aware. We just need to open ourselves to these experiences to just connect with nature. The nature, it's like a spiritual door, and it's always there for us. And connecting with yourself through nature, it's something that we should be doing all the time. It's a way of living. And that way of living takes us to not destroy the planet, basically, you know? Probably the second message is to be really aware that these cultures are here, are alive, and they have a lot to teach us. Like, I have never thought that it's necessary to create this big program or to create these experiences. Just showing the culture as it is, normally, it's enough for us. And so far, we have been having very nice comments about what we're doing. And I'm honest about it. Like, we are just showing what we have. We don't need to make anything up, basically. Yeah.
What are your concerns about tourism, those negative impacts you mentioned earlier, changing? A lot of times we see this around the world where these indigenous communities are practicing these way of life, but now these tourism dollars start coming, and there's the tendency to try to now cater to the tourists and change a little bit, and as more money comes in, the way of life becomes a little less authentic, but obviously it's good. It's raising the quality of life. You know, that's a kind of a yin-yang there. Talk to me a little bit about that. Do you have a lot of communication with the communities about this? Do you have barriers set up to try and prevent some of those negative aspects?
Yeah. You know, we're talking about how the word to describe the Mixe communities is resistance. So for us, it's normal to find some resistance. So it's a mix. It depends on the community. There are some communities where we need to do more work of convincing them about the possible benefits of tourism versus the negative impacts of tourism. And it's all about how it is done. In the other hand, we were talking a few days ago during the trip that there are some threats to the ecosystem in the Mixe region. For example, right now, we are working in the state with this like logistical connection between the Gulf and the Pacific coast, and that goes next to the Mixe region. And of course, this is going to be a push for resources, and also the rise of mezcal requires a lot of wood for cooking the mezcal, and that wood is gonna come from forest. You know.
You were telling me about this the other day. Yeah, you know, I'd never heard about this or didn't really put it together.
Yeah, so tourism can have a negative impact if it's done, for example, in these communities in a massive way. You know, if we start bringing buses and just like this type of tourism that is not respectful of or conscious about the importance of this culture and this land, we are gonna have problems. But if we control the number of people, if we present the culture as it is and we don't start like making changes into the way we present it, if we involve the communities into the tourism, that's the way it should be.
That's the key part, because if you only have a few stakeholders who are benefiting, so if the money just comes into the hotel and maybe to you and to maybe one pottery maker, and everybody else doesn't get anything, right? It's just like, how is that tourism dollar spread throughout the community? Like
Yeah,
groups going to different places, patronizing different places every time.
exactly. We are actually very interested that most communities like get into tourism and make community projects, create community projects. And I think there are some of these problems happening now, like deforestation, loss of language, loss of traditional ceremonies, practices, where tourism can help to preserve. But at the same time, I'm very conscious that tourism has, let's say, it doesn't stop to be like an outside force in a way. So I also don't romanticize tourism, you know? I just try to be very careful in every community. How will it work better? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, you know? Not pushing, not like trying to lie about the benefits of or impacts in general about tourism. I think that's the way it has to be, you know, because the communities are very smart. People know what's best for them. You know, I cannot tell them, "Oh, this is best for you," or "You should do this," because I don't know. Like I cannot say that they don't know what they are doing.
Is there a little bit of a pushback because you live in Oaxaca City? Like, do they see you as like, oh, city boy trying to come back? And do you get any of
Mm,
that?
I don't see that. Probably there are some people who could think that, but I always been very involved with the community, and my father has taught me like the community is very very important. And my father served in these communities for many many years, and I'm just very conscious. And as long as I know that my purpose is the right purpose, you know, the intention is the right intention. Of course, there's always gonna be somebody seeing that or other thing. You know, there's always something that people don't or some people will not like, but that's how projects run, you know. Like it's we have a saying in Mexico, you're not a gold coin that everyone wants, you know. So as long as I know the purpose is the right purpose and the impact is positive, I think I'm gonna keep doing this project. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we're coming up on our deadline because we got meetings coming up. But so let's just finish up by right now. The experience is people will fly into Oaxaca, maybe spend a few days here, and you tell me what you recommend. But plan like a longer trip, maybe a week or so, but spend a few days in Oaxaca. Then you will transport them out to the mountains. And right now, you stay in a bunch of different villages, and each village will offer a different experience, maybe a hike there, cultural experience, and you drive between the villages and stay at a couple of various smaller hotels. Are you hoping to connect the villages like the Sierra Norte does, where you can trek between them?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're asking me this because I have kind of a dream. This will be the vision, let's say, because of these problems that we're just talking about, like deforestation, the loss of culture as well, loss of language. I really want to start connecting the villages to community projects. This is important. It has to be community projects and create a reserve. That once all the communities are together, create a mechanism that all these communities can have a big natural park, let's say natural protected area, because that's gonna create a barrier for the people who wants to come and get all these resources like wood, like water,
Wood for the mezcal.
wood for the mezcal, water for any type of company, you know. And I, in my brain, I call this like the Reserva de Condoy. Condoy is like this warrior, this almost like supernatural entity that protect the Mije people, you know. So this is gonna be La Reserva de Condoy. Hopefully, we can walk in that protected area along different communities because this is what my father was doing already. You know, he used to walk 3 days to come to Oaxaca City before there was any sort of road. This is in the year 70s, not so long time ago.
He would walk 3 days?
3 days in the forest to come all the way to Oaxaca City when you had to do something very important here. So it's
Wow.
just about doing that, recovering all those paths, all those trails. I was telling you that I also participate in this ultra marathon that we organize in Totontepec, where my family is from. And when we started organizing this race, we started to reopen these trails that hadn't been used probably in 60 years, and everyone was so happy about it. So that's kind of my dream to make like to connect all the communities. Probably that will also help to harmonize more the relation between all these communities and have this big protected area. You saw the ecosystems are wonderful. We have a diversity of ecosystems, very nice, how we call cloud forest. So I hope that in a few years, or probably in many years, I don't know, because it sounds like quite a project, I can make them understand how important this is for everyone, because there are some other activities that are already harming the ecosystems.
That's so cool. That's such a great vision. I think
Thank
you're
you.
the man for the job.
I
Really wish you
man.
luck in that. It's an amazing area. So how can people learn more about what you're doing right now and see the tours you offer? Social media, website, what's the best way to?
Yeah, sure. Right now, I'm the leader of these two projects. The first project was the Unión Turística Nación Mije, which groups all these people that we visited. You can check our website at nacionmije.com.mx.
I'll post it with the episode.
Yeah, thank you. Our main tour operator, the company that I run, is called raizayuuk.com. And you can look for us on Instagram especially, and on our website. And there you're going to find our WhatsApp or phone number. Please email us at raiz.ayuuk@gmail.com. But well, I'll let you put all that information in the description of this
And on the
podcast.
Instagram, you have pictures, a lot of these experiences and stuff.
Yes.
Recommend people check it out. Thanks so much for sitting some time. Fascinating story. Really wish you luck on the project, and it was an awesome experience. So thanks for having me here, and thanks for your patience getting this set up. First podcast recorded outside in a public Mexican park. I don't know where we are, but we did it.
Thank you, Will. It's been a pleasure to meet you since the beginning, since we started the trip. Like, I felt a really nice vibe from you. I hope you come back sometime. Oaxaca has so many things to offer, not only the Mije region, but I'm glad it was the Mije region you got to know Oaxaca.
I will definitely be back. It's a very special place. Thank you so much, Uriel.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, you may enjoy the previous episode, Airline Crashes, Traveler's Guilt, and Bribing Mexican Cops with Tim Wenger, travel journalist. You also may enjoy our next episode. We are going to head to Vienna, Austria, our first broadcast from a European country. We're going to sit down with the owners of a walking tour company to get a little insight into Vienna, some traveler's tips, some history. Gonna be great. Until next time, you can find me online at Wake and Wander Will.
Whole wide world. Yes, now I'm riding the terrain, flying high up once again. Got my crew sitting healthy and my boo living wealthy. Level 99, never settle in my mind. So I pedal and I climb up the pedestal and find almighty weapon. So I calm, lightly step into the castle. Satchel, tackled, wrestled down the corridor where I'm grounded through the floor. Roundhouse into my core, down, out, and through the door. Sword down at my side, I gotta round up and ride. Face boss, break jaws till I take off. Face off, stop and swing my serious strike. This is it, take the title, disappear in the night. To the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out, travel to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world.